Good to give you a few notes. You will hear recording in progress just now. We will record this presentation for later use, but good morning or afternoon. My name is Breon Rollins, a consultant with Multnomah Group. And I wanted to give you all a few housekeeping details before we get started with today's presentation on financial wellness themes in 2021. We will record this presentation, I just mentioned, so you all have been muted for the purposes of just making sure the audio quality is good. Keep in mind that if you have a question or details that you need some additional information on, feel free to use the chat functionality. I'll attempt to jump in there to see if there's anything in the Q&A throughout the presentation, but of course we'll have some time at the end of the presentation to make sure that we address any questions or comments that you all have throughout the presentation. We'll spend a good amount of time today talking about what's been happening in the financial wellness world and give you some details moving forward on what we see going 2021 and beyond. So if you have any questions, again, feel free to use that Q&A button and we'll get started. So as I mentioned, my name is Breon Rollins. I'm a consultant here with the firm based out of Houston, Texas. I've been with the firm just under 3 years now. My primary career before had been in the higher education space. I worked as a plan sponsor in HR department, supporting in benefits, healthcare, employee operations, as well as wellness. We'll talk about a lot of those themes today. So throughout the presentation this afternoon, I'll discuss not only some details from my former career, but also share how using some of my former career in my consulting world, how we can merge those two details to talk about the changing landscape of financial wellness. As it mentions here, my previous stop prior to working here with Multnomah Group was at University of Houston. So have a good grasp on what's happened in the nonprofit space as well as higher education space and enjoy the work that I do now. So eager to share a good amount of detail that we'll talk about for the presentation today. Now, one of the first questions that we often get as we discuss financial wellness is exactly what is financial wellness? So the Employee Benefit Research Institute recently conducted a survey. And one of the unique things about this survey is we were able to get details that related to what employers would say about financial wellness and what employees would say about financial wellness. And although there are some similarities, there are some differences between the answers. So if you look on the right-hand side of the slide that I have on the screen now, you'll see areas like not being stressed about my finances, being debt-free, financial freedom, being able to invest day-to-day monthly expenses. You're going to see more of those emotional type responses, the responses that speak to how that we all know your personal finance situation is a personal situation for yourself. So the employees, while they may be, trying to do their best at the job and making sure that they show up and do good work, at the same time, there may be some stress and some emotional needs that are taking place as it relates to their financial situation. And then on the left-hand side, you'll see some similarities again from what employers would say, having access to resources, being comfortable and financially secure for their employee population, being able to equip and achieve retirement through security and planning. So we'll see some of the similar comments that you would see on the employee side. But on the employer side, it's more about offering a resource or a benefit or a value to their employee population. So it's really a difference between what each group would say. Employers say, we would like to make sure that we have functional programs, valuable programs that make sense for our employee population, while employees are concerned about that individual, what's happening with them in that moment during that time to make sure that they're meeting those financial wellness needs and goals. And through that process, we've been able to develop and see that there is a current financial wellness model. So over the next few slides, we'll talk about what the current model looks like and what we think will happen as we move forward going into 2021 and beyond. So if we look at the slide that we have on the screen here now, you'll see three areas. You'll see education, coaching, and products and services. So I want you to think about this more of like a continuum. You have your foundation, your education piece, where we're building the foundation of knowledge, whether that be calculators, articles, some on-demand content that's provided by the record keeper or financial institution that the individual may be working with. Then you can move into more of your action phase where you have your coaching, individual counseling, virtual meetings. We're actually taking action now. So we've built a foundation of education, and then we can move forward towards taking action through a coaching phase. And again, that's some goal setting, tracking, virtual meetings, etc. And then on that third bar on the right-hand side, you'll see products and services. And we feel like that's the piece where you have your resources now. So you can go work with your providers, your investment people for your investments. Banking products and services may be available, those resources that you need there. And then those insurance type products that support maybe not what's happening right now, but could support something for a future benefit or details to help you with the unknown. So think about, as we're building this current model, we're thinking things along the line of building a foundation of knowledge, taking action, and then also providing resources. So whether you're on the employer side of the continuum or an employee side, you can work directly with each group within one of those three models. And if we take a look at the financial wellness model, the next piece would be, how does this fit in the overall stages of financial wellness? So if we take the same approach that we were just thinking on the previous slide, that foundation phase, the action phase, and the resources phase, we could nicely point out details related in these stages also. If we look at the first, and it even has foundation in the term, establish a solid foundation. During that stage, we're creating a budget. We're building those foundational pieces, having access to short-term loans, creating an emergency fund, all of those foundational things we know that an employee would need to be financially solid is a part of that establishing the foundation. The next two we would say is more of your action phase. Now, as you've built that foundation, you have your knowledge base, you've created your plans, etc. You can start taking action on those plans. The first may be paying down debt. You could get credit counseling or working through student loan repayment assistance. And we'll spend a good amount of time during today's presentation discussing student loan repayment. But then once you're able to pay down some debt, so we're still in that action phase, you can take that additional action now and start to grow savings. So having a savings plan, getting investment advice from your provider, your record keepers, and then also doing some planning, whether that be with Social Security or looking at some healthcare options. One of the details that we'll discuss today as we progress through the presentation is a conversation around the health savings account and how that can be used to not only bolster what's happening with the retirement plan, but also be a core part of the financial wellness offering. And then lastly, as we discussed on the previous slide, you go from foundation to action to resources. We now have those resources protecting that family and financial future, those life insurance type products, the tax and legacy type planning. We're going to use the resources that we've gained after we've went through the continuum. So this could be a overarching cycle for people at times. You may move through each one of the steps throughout the phases of a career, phases of a lifetime, but this is generally what we would see as the stages of financial wellness. Now, 2020 and 2021 going into 2021, we've seen a lot of change. Of course, we had the pandemic, still somewhat grappling with the pandemic as a nation. And the themes for 2021 as it relates to financial wellness would really look different if we had this slide saying themes for financial wellness for 2010. If you can, think back to as financial wellness started making its way through the, HR departments or benefit departments in organizations, the number one priority used to be spending and budgeting and debt management. You couldn't go to an organization without someone talking to you about creating a plan, starting a plan, and fulfilling your plan. You couldn't go to an organization without people talking to you about credit card and debt management. And now, if we think about it, the student loan crisis has really been the primary catalyst. And there's been a lot of accelerated content, a lot of accelerated details in our congressional and in Congress that has started to take place. So that has really been one of the bellwethers as it relates to the themes for 2021. And then, of course, the integrated HSA through retirement providers, we'll discuss that more in detail as we go along also. So to get us started, let's just frame the student loan crisis. I think anyone on the call has probably seen media reports or details, but I want to provide a bit more context on why this is so important. So we have some data here. 84% of American adults report that student loans are negatively impacting the amount they're able to save for retirement. And then 73% of loan borrowers report they're putting off maximizing their retirement savings as a result of their student loan debt. So if we can think about being in the retirement space, we all find a good amount of value in what we do. I know one of the greatest things that I get an opportunity to do is directly impact someone's ability to retire, someone's ability to have income producing as they are into retirement. And if individuals are not able, because of what's happening with their student loans, to whether it be save or save enough or put away dollars altogether, we understand that there is a crisis as it relates to what's happening on the student loan side versus people being able to save for retirement. If you see here, it says 1 in 4 Americans have student loan debt, and 4 in 10 adults under the age of 30 have debt, with the average monthly payment being just shy of $400. Now, you've probably seen, as we went into the new administration, there was quite a bit of pressure on President Biden and his administration to immediately cancel all student debt. I know you probably have seen those reports. Then it went to, well, maybe there can be 50,000 of student debt canceled. Maybe there can be 10,000. So it's really been in the media as well as in the political environment, especially here the last 36 months or so. In addition to that, as the COVID pandemic came about, one of the pieces in the CARES Act that took place is that they were able to put a pause on student loan repayments or federal student loan repayments and also interest during that time. And it allowed individuals who may have lost a job or had a significant loss in income to be able to put off that student loan payment during that time. And it should be reinstated here in September. But an interesting stat from CNBC that just recently came out, they were able to aggregate data from the Federal Loan Processing Center, and it's shown that only 11% of individuals continue to make those student loan payments during this time of deferment. So even with the ability to have no interest and have that payment go directly to principal, only 11% of individuals continue to make these student loan payments. So you can see that it has been a burden on individuals. So, Congress and other individuals are working on ways to support people for the student loan crisis. Now, there are some benefits to offering some type of student debt benefit to your employee population groups. And we'll talk about the different type of benefits and how they can be structured here on the corresponding slide. But the first piece would be it's a competitive recruiting benefit. I mean, if you're offering healthcare, retirement, dental, adding this ancillary or additional benefit that could support employees paying off student loans definitely could be a competitive advantage as it relates to recruiting top talent. And then also, one of the main things, once you have your talent in the door, one of the goals for keeping your talent and increasing your retention, it says that here, 86% of workers would commit to their employer for 5 years if they help pay off student loan. In the previous slide, we talked about that average payment being, 400, close to $400 a month. So being able to work with the younger employees, those employees with a significant amount of student debt, it has shown that it has increased retention. And keeping in mind when we're talking about competitive recruiting benefit, currently less than 5% of companies offer some form of student loan benefit currently. Now, we imagine that that number will tick up some as more conversation, more solutions are being made available. But at this moment, it's still relatively new as regards to a benefit being offered to employees to be able to work to support what's happening with their student debt. So, some examples that can be done to support employees with their student loan solutions. First would be the federal forgiveness and income based repayment plans. So, I'm going to mention a few organizations' names throughout these few corresponding slides, and that's not an endorsement from myself or Multnomah Group. We're just providing some examples of resources that are available for employee groups, employer groups that may be interested. And I encourage you, please add it in the chat or the Q&A, or send a message directly after the call if you have any questions, or work with your retirement plan provider directly, because a lot of these solutions are making its way through multiple partners that we work with now. So the Federal Loan Forgiveness Program, for those of you unfamiliar, it was a program that allowed people who worked for not-for-profit institutions, government institutions, to be able to have their loans forgiven if they made a certain number of payments over a certain period of time. And it's a very difficult process for people to navigate. Historically, it's presented challenges for people to understand if they've had understanding the rules, if they've been able to determine if they're in the right type of loan, the right payment process. And it was very difficult for employees, employers to navigate exactly how to get their employees in this forgiveness program. So an organization like Savvy has came along, and they're able to work with individuals for those complex rules. In fact, about 98% of people who applied for the program without some assistance oftentimes were told that you didn't have the correct information, or you weren't in the right loan type, or you weren't making the correct payments. So organizations similar to Savvy, they help participants navigate those complex rules of the program. This program, again, was designed over a decade ago. And what Savvy is able to do through the use of technology and working directly with the partners at the Federal Loan Forgiveness Program, it can make sure that employees are well positioned to not only complete the program successfully, but also make sure that they can navigate the rules and concerns. So I would encourage, if you haven't heard of a program similar to that, again, contact your current retirement provider. A number of retirement providers are working directly with organizations like Savvy, or feel free to send us a note after the presentation. The second piece that has been pretty readily available is the loan refinancing option. There's a number of programs from groups like SoFi. You've probably seen their retail commercials that they discuss often, Common Bond, Enrich. And these programs can help employees take private, public, a number of loans. Because if you can imagine someone with a good amount of student debt, they may have multiple loans from multiple institutions with multiple different interest rates, multiple different maturity dates, et cetera. And what these organizations do, they're able to aggregate all of the detail and put it into one space and allow them to have one more simplified payment structure. And at the same time, that one simplified payment structure gives them a simplified maturity date. So it allows employee a bit more flexibility as it relates to details there. And then lastly would be probably the most connected to the retirement program or retirement benefit would be an integrated workplace solution. And currently there's really three options for an integrated workplace solution, and a number of retirement plan providers in the marketplace are offering support for employers during this process. So one of your first would be just a direct payment. Employer makes a direct payment towards an employee student loan. In the CARES Act provisions, there were some provisions available that allowed employers to make a direct payment for education related expenses. Student loans was added to that, and there's a private letter ruling that is continuing to work its way. So in Secure Act 2.0, if you all recall, Secure Act 1.0, I guess I would call it, from the early part of last year prior to the CARES Act. This is where a lot of the ball got rolling as it related to being able to make a direct payment for student loan assistance. So that's one way, and it can be done directly through an employer. And then there's also some retirement plan providers that have a portal or access where they can support employees to make that direct payment. The second piece would be some form of benefits choice. This is still in the infancy stages, but let's say an employer offers PTO for an employee group. Let's say employee A doesn't use that PTO. There are some rules that would allow that individual to maybe take a one-time reduction of that PTO to go towards the to go towards the student loan payment. Now that's more of a complex process. So you would want to definitely work with the organizations that provide that type of benefit, but it is a solution that is out there. And then the third one would be something directly connected to the retirement plan. And it would be more of a function of, we understand that employers can offer a benefit where employees who have been making their student loan payments, but due to the fact of making student loan payments, they've been unable to defer in their retirement plan. There is some form of a match, so to speak. We can somewhat match what you've been doing to your student loan payment and add you an allocation to your retirement plan. So there are three solutions out there that can be directly connected to your current benefit structure, with some, taxable, some non-taxable benefit. Some require some additional legislation that is taking place, but we just see that integrated workplace benefit as a theme that will continue to pick up steam here in 2021 and moving forward. And I would imagine by 2022, as the Secure Act 2.0 fleshes out all the details, we'll see more legislation and more ruling as it relates to these integrated workplace benefits. So the next piece that we would like to discuss is the spending and budgeting. So as we talked about before, if this was a presentation 10 years ago, we would have led with spending and budgeting. But considering that spending and budgeting is still a concern, because 28% would report they have no emergency savings. 39% would report that they could not cover a $400 expense or more, and 12% skip medical treatment due to the cost of the treatment. So those are situations that, if you could go back to our previous slide where we talked about the emotional concern, the personal piece that employees feel as they deal with these financial issues, this definitely relates back to the wellness conversation. You're skipping a medical treatment due to cost. That is not a position that we would like employee populations to be in. So there are a few solutions to support individuals for some emergency savings approaches, and some are directly connected to the employer, and then some would be connected to outside of the employer as well. So a few, and again, I will mention a few organizations' names that we know work directly with retirement plan providers, not as an endorsement, but just to give you some examples of resources that are available in the marketplace. So the first type of emergency saving approach would be a prize linked savings. Employees receive entries for contributions to their savings program. So we're incentivizing the savings. And there may be some type of prize at the end of said savings period, whether it's a pool, some type of drawing, but individuals who participate in that may have an opportunity to win. So it's a way to just incentivize the individuals in the workplace to incentivize savings. The next would be an in plan, so now connected to the retirement piece, where it's after tax, but participants are automatically enrolled into an after tax savings and as a part of the defined contribution plan. So it's always been, you want the money in a space where it's not as readily easy to get to. So adding those dollars into the retirement plan, there's many more restrictions, many more ways to make it difficult to acquire those dollars. And it also will benefit the employee by being able to enhance their savings. So having that after tax option as a part of the defined contribution plan is definitely a solution also. And then lastly would be an out of plan sidecar, so to speak. And what that means is the record keeper, so again, working with your retirement plan providers, can establish a taxable savings account, and this would not be related to the plan at all. So a separate approach of the in plan after tax, this would not be related to the plan at all. And this could be where the employer determines, hey, if we do this, we're going to seed everybody a certain dollar amount. Or it could be very similar to how other approaches are taken. You put in X amount of dollars and we will match X amount of dollars. So these are just ways to incentivize, and an employer can have an opportunity to show hey, we're supporting you in your emergency savings. We've added these tools, we've added these resources as a part of our core offerings. So these are three approaches that can support some of the emergency savings issues and that debt and budgeting that we're seeing in the marketplace. So the next, as we continue down the debt path, would be what approach would you like to take? So we see approaches in two different ways. You can either have a third party service support you, or you can take an internal approach. And let me give you an example of what we mean here. So a third party approach may be an organization like Yodlee or Plaid, and these are organizations that do account aggregation for employees. You can provide a file to one of these organizations with all of your employees' informations. Your employee can go out and create a username and password, and very similar to some of the online tools that employees may be used to on their phones, whether it be Android or iPhone, they can have some data aggregation that takes place that pulls all of their current debt solutions, debt organization in one place. And what these platforms say that they've been able to accomplish is they can deliver data and resources from over 21,000 sources. That includes banks, credit cards, investment accounts, and they can be directly linked back to your record keeper also. And then what that does, it kind of creates a single sign-on for individuals so that data aggregation can make recommendations, can give information tied to, well, this is how much you should be saving, this is what you may be able to cut off, this is what you may want to change. And then tied directly with your record keeper and your retirement plan provider, you've got a real powerful source of information. Because oftentimes what we'll hear is that it's not that the person doesn't want to do the work, it's that they may not know where everything is, or they may not have all their information in one location. So a third party service can support you in making sure that information is more readily available for your employee groups. Now, the internal approach would be something more, as it means, internal. That could be hiring a dedicated staff. Some organizations have dedicated financial wellness individuals. They may have dedicated personal financial individuals. So that individual may be able to work directly with the employee population. So it's really a thought process on what the philosophy would be of the organization. Would we like a third party to support us and make sure that we're gathering detail and doing this in one way? Or an internal approach where we do it all in-house and we have a dedicated person for financial wellness, a dedicated person for counseling, etc. And there's no one way to do it, just offering different solutions in that platform. So the last piece that I wanted to address before we discuss any questions or Q&A that we have is the integration linked with a health savings account. And maybe I can just start with a qualifier because everybody may not have familiarity with an HSA on the call. An HSA, or a health savings account, would be a tax exempt trust or custodial account set up for you to be able to reimburse certain medical expenses. So this again is connected to a high deductible health plan. High deductible health plans became all the rage as we discussed the Affordable Care Act about a decade ago. These plans were set up in a way that would have a lower cost premium, but also give you the benefit again of a health savings account that can be used in the form of a checking or a savings or a type of account that can be used to cover certain medical expenses you incur. And they are tied to an individual, tied to your social security number. So what's great about an HSA often is they're more portable, so to speak. So just because you're no longer with an employee or an employer, you still have access to those dollars. They're not a use it or lose it situation. Those HSA dollars can stay with you. Now, what are the requirements for implementing an HSA at your organization? And a number of our retirement plan partners and providers are offering some form of linked health savings account also. So one of the first basic eligibility requirements would be individuals must be covered by a high deductible health plan. One of the most common questions we get is, yeah, I would like to turn on the HSA feature with X record keeper, but if there isn't that high deductible health plan that can be connected to it, it is not possible to turn on this feature. Must not be covered by a spouse's plan. For example, an individual couldn't be covered by their spouse's medical plan, whether it be a PPO or an HMO. So this is a plan that is dedicated for that individual, and that individual will have the benefit of those HSA dollars. You cannot be claimed as a dependent on another person's tax return. And you must not be covered by another person's general health FSA or HRA. And let me explain those terms real quick. So the flexible spending account, which would be the FSA, is generally connected to a PPO type plan. That's where an individual has that monthly amount of dollars that are put in and they can use those dollars throughout the year. The HRA or a health reimbursement account is generally tied to either a PPO or an HMO, and that is dollars that are reimbursed back to a person as they spend. So one is more upfront, that FSA, and the other is more of a reimbursement. After you spend, you get those dollars back. And one of the great things about the HSA that we're discussing now, or the health savings account, it can be an alternative vehicle to the 401k plan and a great supplement. Because what can happen is if an individual, let's say that they're able to maximize savings in their 401k plan, they're also able to have savings maximized in the HSA. So now you have a plan as you get near and into retirement. You can have a plan available, a pool of dollars that are available for medical related expenses, meeting that financial wellness mandate that we're attempting to attain. But then you also still have those same retirement dollars that can be used for a variety of things as you start to withdraw and distribute those dollars into retirement. So assuming eligibility is met, then that eligibility generally will happen on the first month following all requirements are met. But most of the time that happens in a open enrollment period. The plan, the organization would need to adopt some form of high deductible health plan, and then you can move right into that. And it's a great supplement to a 401k plan, allows an individual to have greater flexibility and save additional dollars as they progress towards retirement. So let's talk about a few issues to keep in mind as you think about some of the details that I've discussed. One of the first is that these changes to plan design are settler in nature. So that's at the organization level. These are changes in plan design. And then there's also fiduciary considerations that you would want to look at also. There would only be a fiduciary consideration that would be led by that committee or by that board if you're integrating the detail with your retirement program. Once the retirement program is connected, fees, details connected to that, now you have some fiduciary considerations to consider when you're thinking about your retirement program. Also, as I kind of alluded to just a second ago, fees, et cetera. If the cost of the administration service is integrated within the plan, if you're going to be paying for this as a part of either participant fees or plan dollars, now you have a fiduciary consideration, a thing you need to be monitoring and considering. And then also the relative value and cost. Determining if this is a valuable situation for the employee group related to the cost. We're always talking, one of the things that we preach is, understanding the fees. We do fee benchmarking reports annually for the groups that we work with. We give them underlying details from their third-party providers down to the underlying investments. So you need to be able to demonstrate what that value versus the relative cost is. And that's another fiduciary consideration that you'll want to take into account also. So overall in nature, as I begin to open up for questions, I want to give you the financial wellness next steps and what's necessary as you're building out your program. The first thing you would have to decide is there a need in my organization? That can be accomplished through survey data, that can be accomplished through, I mean, most people have a good grasp of what type of employee population. If you know that your employee population tends to be more recent grads, more individuals who come out of graduate school, you may be able to see the participation in your retirement plan. If you feel like you have a lacking in the amount of contributions that are being done by individual employees, you may be able to determine your need in a way that says, okay, we need to establish our financial wellness program. And it may be student debt that you focus on, spending and budget, but you got to first determine your need. The second piece would be establish your budget. And your budget can be twofold. Are we going to only use internal partners? Are we going to hire staff members? Are we going to hire employees to manage this piece? Or will our budget be dedicated to third party type services, third party research and support? And establishing that budget will be important because you'll want to make sure that as you're hitting those milestones, again, you're able to demonstrate the value to what's being accomplished during that time. You'll want to model those solutions to best match your resources. It would be all great if we could say, hey, we're going to put $10 million toward financial wellness. We're going to be able to support in the best way that we can. But we understand that resources can be limited. We understand that you may need to use a partner here or delay an implementation on X due to concerns. And not to mention, as we're coming out of the COVID pandemic, we're still seeing the pressures of what's happening as it relates to coming out of a pandemic. So you'll want to model the solutions to best match your budget resources. You want to evaluate providers. I'll say again, one of the benefits of being able to evaluate your providers is understanding that, okay, well, maybe provider X does this, provider Y does that. And to match our solution, we'll want to make sure that we already have this resource on hand. Great, our record keeper does this. Let's start using this solution. Or we may need to find a new solution out in the marketplace or develop that skill set internally. And then the last piece, because I can't recall the movie, but I think they said, if you build it, they will come. That is not the case for benefit programs. As a person who has worked in employee benefits, going on 15 years now in some space, and working as a consultant now in the retirement space, you can never over communicate a process. So where we say communicate, 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 that I would add two more communicates on there, because getting the message out to your employees who may be low technology users is really important. Getting the information out to people who are high technology users may be important. And at the same time, you'll have to capture those people in the middle who may want something more high touch, something more low touch, because just because you have the service, and I think all of us who have worked in the retirement space know, just because we all know, everyone, we have great plans, we're offering great solutions to individuals. Oftentimes, they may not feel like they have the best depth of information, the best grasp on what's going on. So communicate, communicate, communicate is really important as it relates to building out a strong financial wellness program and making sure that employees know that you're adding value for them, and employers can understand that, hey, we're adding these resources and these resources are being taken advantage of. So I would like to take a pause there. I had about 45 minutes of material prepared, so just shy of that, but I would like to take a moment and open the floor to any questions. I'll check the Q&A and see if we have any now, but I'll pause here for a moment to see if we have any open questions. Now, seeing no open questions, which means that you all are fully prepared to go out and launch your financial wellness program. But no, I really appreciate everyone spending the time with us today. If you do have any follow-up questions, of course, you can feel free to reach back out to me. Again, you will receive this material back to you all. So if you had been feverishly trying to jot down information or notes, you will see this information again. You will get the recorded presentation. And then any questions that you have, if it's something that you can't think of now or a way to frame it later, feel free to send myself an email or anyone within our firm, and we'll be able to get you an answer. So again, thank you so much for spending the early afternoon or morning with me, depending on part of the country that you're on. And we look forward to talking to you all soon. Thanks so much.